Hey, I wanted to talk with you about a thing that happens to us all, and that is comparing ourselves. And I want to explain the root cause of it, how it affects you, and also how you can get rid of it. So, usually we compare ourselves with someone else when we have a wound within ourselves, right? Within the depths of our child self, our little self, the little person that you once were. That person that is below the age of 11, maybe below the age of 7 even. And as a child, you might have had a tough experience. Maybe there was a lot of demands that you had to fulfill to be loved, to be accepted. Or maybe you've learned in life that others are more appreciated and that they are chosen over you. So you then start comparing because you realized you had to be a certain person in order to be accepted. So what that did to you is that you now have that saved in your data. I need to be a certain person. If I'm a certain person, I'm good. And if I'm not a certain person, then I'm bad. And that thinking is not only triggering a lot of other behaviors, but is also triggering comparison. Because what it creates is, it creates a persona, and you just take on a mask, and you put that mask on, and you will always be that person that you think is accepted, is going to be accepted. And you will always try to avoid being a person that isn't accepted. And in order for you to become such a person, you need to have some rules. So you set yourself some boundaries, some rules, how you behave, how you smile, how you look, what do you wear. All of this and much more plays into this. And so you basically are completely changing yourself to be accepted. And now what does that mean? Well, how is that connected with comparison? Well, it's simple. You have rules, and these rules define what is good, and breaking those rules means you're bad. And also it means everyone else who's breaking those rules, everyone else is also bad. So everyone else who's not following these exact rules that you have set for yourself, you see as bad. So you compare a lot because that's what you do to yourself. You compare yourself. You're very tough to yourself. And you might see yourself as better. You might see yourself as the better person. Oh, I'm just surrounded by idiots. That's what you might just think. Or I'm just surrounded by weak people, or by foolish people, or angry people, or you can fill in whatever you want. Something that ain't good, basically, something that you don't want to be like, right? Because you learn you won't be accepted if you're such person. Now, you've learned to not be, for example, foolish. So you started learning a lot to prepare yourself. Prepare yourself for every situation, to have your type of knowledge that helps you navigate through situations as a superior person, right? You might not perceive it as a superiority complex or inferiority complex, but it is an inferiority-superiority complex. You comparing others says a lot about you. It means that you compare yourself. And if you compare yourself, that means that you have an ideal in your mind, and if you don't fulfill it, then you're not good enough and you won't be accepted. That's why you're comparing. And I know some people might not want to accept that, and that's okay, because you're maybe not ready right now for it. Or maybe you need to hear some other words before you're ready for this. But you might come back here and then realize, okay, this was true all along. And I'm telling you this out of experience, because I've been struggling with this most of my life. And I've been able to change that. I've been able to improve myself gradually. It doesn't happen overnight. But the first step is to resolve being the judge. There's a law in the universe. It's called the law of relativity, which means and which says that everything in this universe is relative. Whether it's good or bad, whether you're old or young, whether you're black or white, it's all relative. It has no meaning. And the law of relativity also says that the meaning can only be given by the subject, for example you, by the perspective that you have on something. You are giving something meaning, while as it actually is meaningless. It is you who's saying this is good or bad. But someone who loses their job might be frustrated and says that is totally bad, but the soul of that person does not care. It still let it happen, right? So the soul knows that there is a different path meant for that person, and therefore manifested a new path, a path that splits that person away from that job. And so that person now finds a new path, maybe a very difficult path. Even if it's difficult, still, that is what was manifested by that person. You are the soul, and the soul manifests. Now, the more you resist something, the more the challenges will be manifested. So instead of comparing yourself and therefore hurting yourself, punishing yourself every single second, if you're a person that compares, that means you compare yourself. And if you compare yourself, that means it is hurting your self-love and self-worth. And you don't deserve that. You deserve to be happy. And you can never be happy if you compare. So to be really in a state of happiness, you need to stop trying to fix things. Stop comparing. And that only works by dissolving the judge. Stop judging. Accept the law of relativity. Everything is relative. That person that lost their job might have lost it, but then in the next year might have gotten a much better position in their life. So, was it good? Was it bad? It's subjective. You decide. But why decide? When we already know the soul sees it as relative. It's just your ego that gives it meaning. Your ego is afraid. Your soul isn't. You have nothing to lose. You're just afraid of losing. You're afraid of not being accepted. You're afraid of not being better. You're afraid of not being clever. But you don't need to be clever. You don't need to be better. You don't need to be rich. You don't need to be good looking. You don't need to be anything. Because everything you need to be, you are anyway. You're just observing the manifestation. You're just observing it. And if you observe it and drop being a judge, because you know everything's relative, then you have a chance to manifest great things. Now, you might say, but if someone is totally stupid, or if someone is totally destroying my life or whatever, then you might say, how can I just accept that? How can I just be good with that? How can I not compare? Because of course, I don't want to be such like that person. I want to be clever, of course. Look at that person. They messed up everything. I have been there. But now look at it. When you compare, and yes, maybe you're clever, you're such a clever person, but now you compare and see that person that supposedly is dumb. No. What do you create in that moment? Resistance. Resistance. Negative thoughts. You keep yourself stuck in comparison. Comparison being self-punishment, because you constantly keep yourself in check. Because if you compare with others, that means you compare yourself. And if you compare yourself, that means you constantly are having someone behind you that looks over your shoulders and tells you, oh my God, you did that wrong. Because you're comparing, right? So you are never in peace. But if you stop comparing, if you start integrating, you just accept the situation as it is. If you do that, then you feel at peace. So you have the choice. You can say, but I need to be clever, or I need to be better, because if I'm not better or more clever or this or that, or if I don't tell the people that they are dumb, how will they fix themselves, right? If you think that way, you keep yourself stuck. Stuck in negativity, stuck in a loop. Or you can just drop that. Drop being a judge. And if you're not the judge, you're able to be in peace, no matter what situation is unfolding. And it was particularly hard for me, because then people messed things up. That cost me money. And that was hard for me, because I'm working hard for my money. And so I'm like, I work hard for this. And people just mess up my life. How can I accept that? Well, the choice was always mine. Do I let this trigger me? Because then I'm definitely negative. And if I'm negative, how can I manifest positive? So, if you really want to grow and change your life, then you cannot afford falling for these tiny little challenges and let them turn you negative. Because if you lose yourself in these situations, you can never create a great life, which you see as great and perceive as great. The goals you might have, you cannot achieve because you're negative. Drop being the judge. Accept it's all relative. Stay neutral. Neutral doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're giving up. It means that you acknowledge that you are seeing the situation, that you're feeling it, and maybe you even have desires to change it. You acknowledge those thoughts that arise. We don't ignore them. We acknowledge them. We acknowledge that they're there, but then we remind ourselves, I am not the mind. I am not the body. I am the observing soul. I am the observer. If the mind talks, who listens? Who are you? Who's listening? If you hear a thought, who's listening? Now people say, I am the thought. If you're the thought, then why do you have to say it? If it's already you, if you already know it, if it's you that says it, why do you have to listen to yourself? You already know it, right? It's your mind, it's your brain. Now your brain is presenting you some analysis on a situation, but that's not you. You are more than that. You're the soul, the observing mind, which is neutral. Just observe. Observing does not mean judging. Just observe. Grow from every single moment. Sounds tough, but it isn't. Because once you tune into the observing mindset, you actually tune into being truly you. Because as long as you tune into the ego mindset, you're losing yourself and you stay lost within the depths of your mind, which isn't you. You're not the mind, you're not the body, you're the soul. So as long as you're just following your mind, you're stuck, cannot grow, cannot proceed. And as soon as you accept that you are not the mind, not the body, but only the soul, the observer, once you accept that, you have your life much easier immediately, because all the situations become irrelevant.